Ooh, Evo, you are live and we finally got the feed going, so you're good to go and I'm gonna exit my stage.
Sounds good. Hope you can hear me too. It's as always, a couple little glitchy things with technology, but hey, I'm on. I'm going to get started since we're getting a little bit of a late start. So I'm going to say that the first thing to start with this idea of using the birth chart for magic is that anything that works as a tool for divination, whether it be tarot, runes, and so on, is not a problem with using it for magic. If it works for divination, you can flip the switch and make it something that works as an active tool. So I'm going to say that a birth chart for an individual, and we're just going to focus on that because we've only got a little bit of time for this class, is like having a proxy connection. It is a printout, if you will, of your energy genome, if you want to compare it to biology. It is like a sigil that represents the spirit that you are. I could go on and on and on, but what does that really mean? It is something that is powerful and useful. For example, let's say that you are doing healing at a distance, which is something that a lot of people do. Well, perhaps you've had the situation of doing healing at a distance where you have a photo of the person, or you have somebody who knows them especially well that's going to act as kind of like a relay, and the person is receiving the energy and then sending it to the person and so on. Well, I'm going to suggest that if you have a person's birth chart, having that birth chart is like having a lock of their hair or a drop of their blood. It is a resonant signal to everything that they are. So, as a for example, I've done healing at a distance where we've placed the chart on a central altar with a photo of the person, and if we have anything else about them, even better. And the thing that happens is you have something that resonates exactly to that person. I've also put rolled up little scrolls or folded up little bits of a chart. You can print them any size you need to, and put them inside poppets, little dolls used for healing purposes. So the idea of using the chart as a proxy connection is really valuable. Honestly, I've also used it for trying to do distance communication with somebody. So, for example, if you have somebody who is been trying to get a hold of them, you can't get a hold of them for love or money, but you happen to have their birth chart. I've placed my hands on that birth chart and imagine that they were seated right across the table from me and sent the message through the chart. Please, I'm trying to get a hold of you. Are you okay? Is everything all right? So, in some ways, having somebody's birth chart is like having their secret phone number or the email that they don't share with anybody because they don't want it flooded. I'm going to also say that there are a bunch of authors, and I've done charts for a lot of authors who say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm iffy about giving people's chart, my info, because they'll have my chart." Here's the part that's real. If you have any reason to be concerned, and contact me and I can give you, like, I'll send you an outline for ideas for awarding ceremony, but you can do an entire ceremony where you print out your chart and you awaken your chart and you fold it up, put it in a jar, put it on an altar, and basically protect it against being used as that kind of proxy connection without your permission. The other thing is that your chart is an amazing guide to self self initiation of a sorts, or spiritual evolution of a sorts, because the chart not just represents the sigil that is you, your energy name, your energy genome. It is also a depiction of the patterns that you're going to have repeating again and again throughout time in your life. So I think that if you have a birth chart, and by the way, for the purpose of what I'm about to describe as a ritual thing, even if you don't have an exact time, it'll still have value, but the more exact the time, the better. Uh, but as a for example, we've done the using the ever so popular Magic Blue painter's tape that doesn't ruin your floor. We've marked out a chart on the floor, marked off the 12 houses, and we've placed in each of the 12 houses, either if you have a group of people have people standing in each of the houses and have them role play. You can do it deeper. You can do it drawing down or aspecting, but role play your chart and basically walk from a full circle inside your chart, if you will, to experience the energies and the patterns that repeat again and again. And the more you know about astrology, or if you have friends that are helping you, all the better. But it becomes an evolutionary journey, and you experience it differently each time. And if you're astrologically minded, you can also add the aspects and other things and turn it into a full-fledged ritual, honestly. And if you don't have those options, and this will give you an opportunity to do some research or have a friend that knows a bit more astrology help you, it can also be converted. The chart is also inspiration for a guided visualization, a path working that is exactly about the life choices and the life energy that you will go through again and again. So you can use the birth chart as a powerful tool for that kind of spiritual evolution, that self-initiation, not into a tradition, but into the fullness of your own divinity, your own spirit. And I'm going to say that I've done this many times and it never gets old, and you can repeat it as many times as you like, and you still have new things to learn every single time. And I've had the pleasure of having done with a group of people that are also magical folks, ritualists, and had a person for each house, and that's really awesome. And if you don't do that, even if you're doing it solo, you can write little notes to yourself and put them on the ground and pick them up and read them to yourself as you walk from space to space. Honestly, it'll be just as powerful. Now, I've also incorporated my chart in a place you wouldn't necessarily think of. So I have a really beautiful stang, and if you the iron part was blacksmithed by the daughter of one of my dear friends, and I collected the holly that's the bottom that had a vine twined around it, so on. And I consecrated it in the way that I would normally consecrate such things to align it and attune it to me. But here's something that I've done mostly with staves, athames, and sometimes with magic mirrors or divinatory tools that I'm going to use just for me. Is I had, like in that case, I drilled a hole a little bit deeper where the metal part was going to join the wood, and I rolled up a small version of my chart and I inserted it inside there to make that particular tool even more resonant to me. But wait, I'm going to say treat that little piece of paper like you would something that is sacred and powerful and magical. So, for example, ideally, before using a printout of a chart for magical purposes, here's pretend that's the chart. I'm going to trace with my finger the circle that's the wheel, and I'm going to pour energy into it so that I'm pouring that blue witch fire into that circle that's the circle around the chart. And I'm going to draw each line in blue fire. Now, if you don't know astrology, just enlivening the symbols themselves with your energy awakens the chart to a degree, because there are thousands of years and tens of thousands, if not 100,000s of people that have thought about those symbols and have incorporated those symbols into their work, either in divination or in magic. So guess what? Those are magical symbols, and they wake up pretty damn fast because they are connected to all the work other people have done. So simply just tracing and scribing with energy the symbols and the shapes on the chart are enough to wake it up to a degree. And if you happen to know even the tiniest little bit, maybe you're going to put your finger on that circle and dot that's the sun symbol in your birth chart and say, I awaken the divine spark within me. I call upon the power of my divine spark, my light within, my central fire to awaken. And maybe you're going to go, but ideally, I'm going to put my finger on each one of the planets in the chart, name what part of it is in me, and maybe a few other qualities about it, and wake it up. So it enlivens it. You are now turning that printout that came out of your computer into a printer into a scroll of magic. And by the way, I love any excuse. I'm busy, so I hardly ever have an excuse to do anything that involves arts or crafts. So this is also an excuse for me to get out the acrylics or watercolors and actually do a little color coding in the chart or colored pencils and provide a little bit more connection to it. So that makes it a more living and powerful thing. So I've put it inside tools. I've put it underneath the felt in the box for my tarot deck because anything that is got my energy imprint that strongly and that crisply makes that tool connect more fully when I use it. So that is another use that I think is amazing. I've also used somebody's chart folded up in my pocket as a way of tuning in. When somebody's provided it for me, even if I'm in person, I will sometimes put it in my pocket after it's been blessed and I've had the person push energy into it before I do work for them, whether that's doing a reading or whether that's doing a healing or whether doing some other kind of work, because in so doing, I am having a sample of their energy. It's like having a little tuning fork tuned to the key of their life. So it's a way of connecting to them on a different level. I'm not saying that there aren't 1,000 other ways that work perfectly well, but this is just one more tool that is not that hard to add to your bag of tricks, especially nowadays where you can jump on many different websites and get birth charts for almost nothing. Hey, I've also used this with the dead. Let's be real. I've used the birth chart of some people, or the death chart, the chart that is cast for the day and time and location of their death, as a tool for connecting with those folks that are on the other side, either for mediumship or simply for doing contemplative work about the meaning of their work. I've looked at some of my spiritual ancestors, the mighty dead of magical folks that have passed on, and used that as a way to connect with them in a different way. So I'm asking you to go crazy and brainstorm. You have a powerful magical tool available, right? Now, I've also used it for trying to find a lost person. I actually helped find some. In this case, the person had passed, but we found the body, so that's better than never knowing. Um, Here's one that you probably will need sooner or later. How about this? I have lots of wards up in my house, and I think it's a good idea, regardless of what you think your situation is. It's always a good idea to set up a boundary so that the energy of your house is cleaner and crisper, and there's plenty of noise in the world. So it's a good idea to try to keep it out. And when I create the wards for the house, one of the things that I do, and especially if I'm helping somebody else toward their house, and that's certainly the case for mine, is I use my birth chart as the master, or their birth charts as the master lock. So either on the altar, or actually I've got a couple that are like taped behind paintings or mirrors or whatnot hanging in the house. But I actually basically set up the ward with the intention and with the instruction to the warding spirit, and I often create a servitor or intelligence for the purpose of a warding, that the charts that have been named here these are the people that are allowed to go through freely, and these are the people that can modify the wards in safe places in the house. Get the idea? Basically, it's your ID system for your wards. Think of it as magical biometrics, if you want to think of it that way. So far, so good. We got a little bit of a late start, and I'm trying to provide as much of the good information as possible. So I'm one of those people that believes everything's alive. Everything has spirit. Everything is its own being to some degree. And I think that the universe, in its many forms and its many levels, whether it's viewed as one whole, or I'm one of those soft polytheists. I think of all divine beings as being separate and unique, but only as much as we are. I mean, I think identity is a very slippery thing. So I think about everything being all one and connected, and everything being separate and individual, at least for the duration of its existence. Or in our case, it's incarnation. I believe in reincarnation. You don't have to. But in the case of divine beings, I don't know how long they exist as themselves before they become something different. Be that as it may. What I'm going to suggest is that everything is a spirit. In the Witch's Sun Sign series books that I'm the anchor author on, co-author of all 12, I mentioned pretty directly several times that the idea is that each of the 12 signs is a spirit, its own being. And whether it started that way, it became that way. Nature hates a vacuum. And if you create a pretty form, it's going to become enlivened and come alive. So I'm also going to suggest that you are made of multiple beings and spirits. I mentioned in my elemental elements book, Four Elements of the Wise, that we are not just made out of the elements, we are made out of the elementals, a weaving of different kinds of consciousness, of different kinds of spirits. Okay. So I'm going to say your chart is a listing of the spirits that are part of your personal court, part of your alliance of beings and spirit that came into the world with you when you were born. And whether or not you believe them as actual separate beings, or if you view them as being just a useful fiction for the purpose of magic, I don't care. I view them as real. So, for example, I'm going to say that each of the spirits that make up you, or are your like guardian angels and so on, are beings in your chart. So, for example, let's say that, and I'm going to say when you start exploring this, explore one at a time and spend enough time having tea and conversation with each of these spirits as you find them within yourselves or evoke them outside. But let's say someone has Mars in Taurus. And for astrology types, let's say that their Mars in Taurus is in the fifth house. And I'll add one more detail. And their fifth house has an Aries cusp. So far, so good. By the way, you don't need to know this much astrology. I'm just giving you a full-fledged example. So Mars in Taurus in the fifth house with an Aries cusp is a spirit that lives within you. Your chart's a listing of your spirits by affinity. So how would I call upon this being to show itself so that we can have, a cup of tea and conversation, or whatever you prefer to drink? So the quick little invocation that I wrote for that one was, I'm putting my finger on the Mars in the chart, and I would say something like, "You who are crowned with the double horns of bull and ram, Taurus and Aries, I call you. You who speak with the roar of the lion, fifth house is the Leo house, I call you. You who light the world with both sunlight and fire, I call you. You who are passionate and strong, I call you." And I basically you can create a little call, a little invocation. If you don't like doing that way, doing some other way, you can you summon up that part of you, or you summon up that spirit that gifted you with those qualities when you came into this incarnation, and ask them for conversation. Or perhaps later on, after you talk to some of these spirits, the next time that you have need for what your Mars in Taurus in the fifth house and Aries or whatever you have offers you, you can pump it up. So that I actually have called upon those individual spirits, and because I'm not an artist with a capital A like some of my friends are, but I do like to draw and I do like to paint. And I have drawn some of the spirits that live in my chart. And I encourage you, if you are a doodler, then you might want to draw the bestiary of spirits that are in your chart as revealed by the planets, in which houses they are, in which signs they are, and so on. And if you aren't prone to trusting your capacity to make visual art that you're comfortable with, well, honestly, then a little bit of research, and you're going to be writing these beautiful descriptions or calls or poems that represent these beings. And it's a different way of integrating those powers within yourself. Evo, question. Evo has time. What are the different colored lines in your chart? So if you look at printouts of charts, depending upon the software or the settings or the and sensibilities of the programmer and so on, sometimes you can click on so that it shows you the aspects, the energetic relationships between different planets. And sometimes they make them thicker or thinner depending upon how exact it is, aka how strong it is. And sometimes people will color code them like, blue or green are the quote unquote helpful ones. Red is the stressful one. but it's, but that's really something that's totally manageable on your end. And actually, if you're coloring your own chart, you can come up with your own approach. Somebody's mentioned Gustav Holst and the planets. Um, for those who are not familiar with Gustav Holst, the planets, even if you don't like symphonic work, I will tell you that when I was like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, 11 years old, my parents took me to a concert and for Gustav Holst the Planets, and I had an out of body full color experience for the representations for each of the planets in that. So maybe that was a clue about where some of the things were going to be headed in a while. And oh, somebody said a bestiary of charts. Yeah, basically that's what I'm suggesting is something that you can do. But it's more than a bestiary. It's ultimately your own little collection of personal daemons, the good kind, that are in you. And also, when you need to activate that part of you, and let's say that you're not feeling particularly good at communication. You're heading into a difficult conversation or a very important conversation, and so on. Then it may be that you're going to awaken, stir some and awaken the spirit of Mercury that lives in your chart, your specific spirit of Mercury that lives in your chart, to grant you the gift of clear thought, grant you the gift of communication, and the biggest gift of all, of clear understanding and listening, because there is no capacity to communicate without capacity to listen deep. So these things that are used primarily for psychological or purposes or personal development purposes or divination, yada yada. That's the way that most people head with astrology. I'm saying that everything in your chart, including the piece of paper of the chart itself, is magic. Is magic. Now, you can also consider this as a way of creating an empowerment ritual. I mentioned early on the idea of experiencing your chart as a way of getting to know your own energies and your own chart in a deeper way. But what I suggest is that you can also create a challenge where you experience each of your planets, and then ask yourself, are you living up to what they have offered you? Are you providing what they have offered you? And I'm going to say, because it's hard to keep track of the questions as well, but I am going to say that there are many different styles of astrology, many different schools of astrology, many different systems for houses. And then we can also go off into Vedic astrology and Chinese astrology and different other and stuff that's not technically astrology, but is star lore that is used in other systems. As long as you stay consistent with what you do, they are each going to be revelatory and useful. I'm not going to say that one is better or worse. But you may have a calling to one, or one that feels more at home with you, in the same way that you may have a stronger calling to particular pantheons or cultural references in the magic or that you currently do, or whatever kind that may be. I'm also going to say, if you find that there is something that is happening in your life in the near future, let's say that an astrologer or a diviner or your own instinct says that you are going to be going into some rough times. I had a friend that was going to be having Pluto by transit conjuncting their sun, moon, and Mercury pretty much all in a row, because that's the way her chart's configured. And it's really rough stuff. But I'm going to say really rough stuff can make you stronger. But there's a difference between something turning into emotional scar tissue versus emotional muscle. And part of that is awareness. And part of that is the way in which you approach the material. So that she had a chat with the spirits of the planets that were about to be visited by Pluto, to let them know what's going on. And as part of that process, she ended up creating a little amulet that included her sun, moon, and Mercury spirits to keep her tuned into the changes, so that you are swimming with the tide rather than against the tide, surfing the wave of change rather than being tumbled under and pulled into the sand. So there's a lot of potential, and I really want you to explore all those possibilities. Let's see. I started late, so I'm not sure what if I can go on for a few more minutes because of the technical difficulties. I'm going to assume I can. Awesome, Llewellyn books. Thank you for letting me know. I didn't know. Cool. So here's the other thing that I'm going to suggest for you. Um, have you ever felt like you were being pummeled by other people's thoughts and energies? And I'm not talking about curses or any intentional workings per se, but I'm pretty sure that many individuals have or are in a stressful workplace or a stressful classroom situation or any number of places where people don't even need to be mean per se. Sometimes, honestly, it's too loud. It's too much energy. It's too many people having strong emotions, and you are withering like a standing in the sun at noon in Florida in the summer. It's not a great thing. So what I'm going to suggest is one of the ways that you might want to create a personal shield, a personal is to use your birth chart. But here's what I'm going to suggest, and you can either put it on your altar. I have a lot of altars. It's a problem, or fold it up and turn it into a little thing that goes into a pouch. By the way, you can print things really tiny. It doesn't have to be big for this purpose. Uh, and I've created charts who I've imbued with the following intention and energy. Take the hit for me. Take the hit for me. In other words, I've used a chart as sunscreen. I've used a chart as a temporary shield and then periodically replace it. But basically, if people are thinking loud at you and you happen to be in that situation, I would prefer to since the chart resonates to my energy, it can also attract the hits, if you want to think of it that way. So I've used the chart as a way of drawing negative energies or unintended negative energy, which is often what happens when people have emotional stuff. And if you're listening to this class, you're probably here to some degree because you are sensitive to energies and emotions. Well, this is a shield that works until it works, and then I get rid of it. But yeah, I've used this very successfully. Honestly, I often use this when I go to conferences and big events where I'm going to have over the course of a weekend, easily sometimes 100 or more separate people that are going to be staring at me, thinking about what I'm saying and doing. And it's a really good idea to have something that is the hit point taker instead of me. I've also used it in cleanup work when somebody actually does have some kind of negative working that's been done against them, where I'll put the scroll of the chart inside a jar, stick the person inside a warded protected space, taunt and attract the curse, get it to come into the jar, and then voila, seal it up, and basically use the chart as a kind of spirit trap if you're trying to trap a working that has been sent at you. Get the idea? I'm going to take a sip of water. I was out cutting the grass earlier today, so my nose is. Ugh. Somebody says, write a book about this, please. Maybe. I keep thinking about it. I actually have like dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways to use astrology in magical ways. So and all of these, like I have a ritual toward a ritual toward a chart, or a ritual to set it up as a proxy for yourself or for someone else. A ritual for summoning up the spirits of your chart one at a time. Why do I keep saying one at a time? Guys, if you're trying to meet somebody and get to know them, would you want to? It's not like speed dating, and it's not like trying to have a conversation with 5 people at once. When you meet something, you want to meet one-on-one so you can actually talk. Oh, I am planning on presenting at Convocation again next year if they'll take me. I was going to be filling out the forms next week. So let me give you another idea. And this is one that is more for magical folks in a kind of developing your skills thing. So somebody recently said to me, "Hey, I'd like to get better at psychism. I'd like to get better at opening myself up." And I said, "Well, so let's find out. What do you think the biggest issue is first? Is it about sensitivity? Is it about you receive stuff but you can't make sense of it? You understand what I'm saying? It's like, there are many possible, everything's multi-factor. I don't actually think when it comes to human beings, one thing is ever the case. It's usually multi-factor. But let's say that the person is can't make sense. They get nebulous impressions or complicated impressions. They can't make sense of it. Maybe you're going to want to talk to your Mercury spirit within and say, help me work with my psychism. Or maybe you're going to talk to your Neptune spirit within if it's a question of, okay, you must have shut down at some point. Please open up and allow more through. Or maybe you want to talk to your Jupiter spirit in your chart and say, allow me to have the secret decoder ring that allows me to have better pattern recognition so I can turn those impressions into something that is a cohesive whole. So if you are trying to do something, ask. Here's an example of another kind of ritual that we did as a distance ritual. A friend of ours was having a very solidly difficult emotional time, and with permission and consent, because consent is key, right? We put several of us put their chart on our altars, and in my case, what I did, they were going through a really rough time. It's too complicated to explain, but here's what I did. I put her after awakening her chart, and I put my finger on each of the planets and woke up the energy, and imagining their face, imagining their voice. I put a circle of rose quartzes around the circular edge of the chart. I had a little bowls with lavender blossoms, jasmine blossoms, rose petals, and basically I covered the entire chart with different plant material. Flowers, actually, all petals of different things that were supportive and soothing and nurturing, and naming the energy that I was putting into the aura that surrounded her chart. And each of us was doing something like that. And did it help them getting through their difficult time? They reported it did. Like most things magical, it's hard to know without having, dual timelines to have a control of, this is the universe where they didn't get the magical help. But the point is, they felt it easily. And here's the thing, good thing or bad thing, please listen to this one carefully. Good thing or bad thing, when you are using somebody's birth chart as that kind of linkage, the good news is, and especially in the case of the person that I was doing this work for, it gets past their defenses because it reads as being part of their energy. Right? It's hard to shield against your own energy. So that meant that the goodness that was being sent their way, they were receiving with less of their normal resistance, because normally they're really bad about taking help from anyone. So you get the idea. So you get the idea. It is a powerful thing. It's also something that you have to be careful about, because since it does get past people's defenses, there has to be full willingness, or else I'm gonna sick the astral police on you, because that for me falls in the category of you have something that is a sacred key into somebody, you better use it right. Otherwise, I don't think it's a good idea to be doing magic, period, if you're going to do that kind of thing. Anyway, do we have any questions, or are we completely crossing the timeline border? Let's see what's in the... There's a lot of good things being discussed in the chat. I think maybe time for one question. Go for it. Anybody got a quick question? Yes, please listen to... I'm so glad that they're going to be posting these on YouTube so that you can listen to them and take notes. Somebody's telling me I should write this book. Man, I got a long list of books people have told me to write. May I live long enough to write all the books I need to. Ooh, tattoo of our birth charts, yes or no? I am, if it's your birth chart, getting it tattooed on yourself is acceptable. I am really always careful with tattooing because it is a resonant antenna that you've placed on your body. So if you do get the tattoo of your birth chart, then I would also have a scroll of your birth chart somewhere in a jar with protections on it that nobody can use your chart against you. Can you do a chart for when you were conceived? That requires extra special divination to make your best guess, and there are a lot of ways in which you can rectify a chart for that kind of thing, but that's a really complicated issue. Just wondering how I can figure out my charts bestial and God of Spirit guys. Is there a book? You know what? I don't think there is a book per se, but Llewellyn, I'm not familiar with the entire Llewellyn library, but I think that there's, but that it, I think that the process of researching each of your planets by sign, by house, and by the cusp of the sign, the house, and so on, you'll end up creating your own bestiary, if you will, and the research will take you deeper into all of them. What's something that you found surprise in working with those sun sign books? Oh, I'm going to just say that the sun sign books, the biggest surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise was that the process for each book matched the energy of the sign. And I guess that's all the time we got. Thanks.